All right. In addition to filling in this Mentee, if you could write in the chat your name and where you teach and what level you teach. And then people, as you read those chats, see if there's anybody here that you know. And if you recognize somebody, send them a private message just to say hi. Let's enforce the community sense of what's going on here. I'll start. I am Leah Doryosef, and I teach in Kiryat Tivon High School. So as you guys write who you are, we'll all see, and if you're near someone, or you recognize their school, or you teach the same level, send them a private message and say hi.
Leah, for those who want the resources in hand, there's a master sheet for the session with all of our links and all of our resources if people are interested in that. Thanks so much, and it's in the slide.
Document. Let me post the bit.ly instead of the
Let's encourage people to use those Mentee results.
Yeah, I'm not so clear on what you want in those Mentee results. Like we should go each one only up to 10 and then you don't get to 100?
Right, you can actually teach that. When you're designing a Mentee, you can set the points any way you want. This is just an example.
This Mentee goes up to 100, so it's an example. You sort of have to pick and choose what your priorities are, which is it's also a good classroom exercise, by the way. And fiendishly, I set them so I think you can't award the same amount of points for each.
Fantastic. Karen is here from the ETAI office, reminding everybody that you can easily join, become a member of ETAI, which will give you access to the recordings of all of these sessions today. Now, the general public will have access to the plenaries, but if you want later to come back to Alan's talk, you'd have to be a member and contact Karen in the office. She's posted the phone number here, which is 02-500-1844, or write an email to etaioffice@gmail.com.
And I want to thank Karen because I'm a new ETAI member, so she managed to get my membership set up almost instantaneously. So thank you, Karen.
For the newcomers, I'm going to repost the link to the Mentee that we're doing in advance and ask you to write your name and where and what you teach in the chat. So as these things are scrolling by, as we're getting to know each other, see if there's someone that you know, someone that you recognize, or someone who might be in a town near you, and send them a private message and say hello. We're going to get started in just one more minute.
Amazing how common access to PCs is as a barrier.
All right, one more time for everyone. I'm going to post a link to the Mentee so we can get started. And I can see fantastically we've got Maya, and we've got Rachel and Alan and myself. Fantastic. All right, so welcome to the second breakout session. This session is going to be run by Dr. Alan Selis, who serves as the Curriculum and Instruction Specialist for Career and Technology Education in grades 6 through 12 for Uplift Education, a charter school network in Dallas, Texas that serves nearly 25,000 students from low-income households. Alan, over to you.
Thanks so much. Good. So thank you all for being here. For starters, I'm going to pop between screens and give you a brief overview of what we're going to do and how we're going to work today. I want to talk about a framework for understanding what we've been going through with use of technology and distance technology in instruction. And from there, I want to talk about where we've gone in the school that I serve to create some coherent standards and practices, and talk about ways that we can use some of the same tools here. And Leah actually told me as we were reviewing the session to be thoughtful about talking about process. We've been working on this very intensely, and I want to show you in the end of the session the documents and policies that we've created, and they're very robust, and I think they're very positive. So I want to give you all building blocks for getting there. So with that said, I'm going to take a quick peek into the Mentee results just for fun, and then I'm going to jump first into what's our framework for talking about this whole phenomenon of the shift to this whole disruption we've been through, and how can we lean in and create positive tools. So let me start with getting the results from you all. So the Mentee poll results. I'm so proud of my colleagues for deciding that classroom management is more important than technology, because that's missed in a lot of places. And you know, if you have horrible classroom management and great technology, you're really not going to be a good teacher. So I appreciate that attention to the fact that teaching is always about engaging with students. Up front, far away, it doesn't matter. It is still about doing that well and doing it effectively. So bravo. And as you all noted, things that are barriers and things that we bump into, time limits, access to PCs were things that multiple people said, and all the rest, policies, classroom management, training, and I would even attribute lack of confidence. These are all things that have to do with how well we're supporting teachers. And that's the rest of what we're going to talk about now. So let me start with a working framework to help us sort of look through about engaging. And I mean, sorry to connect this to COVID, but Kubler-Ross's framework is the one that kind of, you know, came first. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. For those who spend a little time, you know, working in that space or studying this, it's not a linear process. These don't happen all at once. These are things that we can loop around, but they're stages that people commonly go through. So I'm not, well, it might not be so far off to suggest that we have some loss and hurt and very certainly mourning going on. But I think a different process is going on as we engage with the disruption caused by Corona. I described it as this: shock, incoherence, experimentation, policymaking, and collaboration. So basically, as I watched what my own institution did, shock is the moment where you just hit the brakes. You stop teaching, you do nothing. Incoherence is the next step. You throw poor solutions back. And I'll give you an example of one of the incoherent solutions that my own institution offered. My school has 2,000 teachers. We serve 25,000 students. There are 47 campuses. These are low-income kids. The impact of not teaching and just interrupting teaching is really devastating. So we had to get learning back on track somehow. So what was the incoherent first solution? We decided that we were going to teach our lessons frontally via Facebook Live videos. Okay. Mistake number one, it's frontal. Mistake number two, we didn't have helpful learning interactions. Mistake number three, the kind of interactivity that we did have were crazy things going on in the chat windows that we couldn't disable. Under US law, my school is a mandate reporter. One kid said either seriously or joking, I feel so terrible, I want to hurt myself. Other kids started copycatting. By the end of the hour, we had 5 calls to state agencies and our lawyers involved. That would be an incoherent response. What collaboration looks like now is something that you'll see in the end, but very quickly, we started asking what worked, figuring out what our theory about change making and teaching was, setting standards, and finally working together. So that's the place that I'm gonna bring us to. So I'm curious, I'm gonna stop the share for a second, invite people into the chat room. So assuming that those are the places that we can be. Shock is one, incoherence is the other. We said experimentation is the next, policy making, and collaboration. If you're comfortable, I'd like to invite you to toss into the chat box, where do you feel your institution is right now in that flow from shock, sort of shocked, being arrested in place, to collaboration in response to COVID? I'm going to pause for a second and invite you to please use the chat box. And just pop the word out that matches where you think you are. I'm going to specially ask Eileen and Ellie to answer. I'm a little confused. Thank you. Okay. So Eileen, just give us a nod or a wave. Did you go through shock and incoherence, or were you able to jump back right straight to experimentation? Policymaking, but not very well.
I am still, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I'm still in incoherence. There were kids,
It's a place to be, yeah.
I had kids who liked me, kids I've known for 1-2 years.
Hold for, we'll open up discussion in the end. But
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine, that's fine. Physically present and half on Zoom, okay. So it seems like people are all over the place. That in itself is not a shocker. If we look at globally what's going on, okay, all right. None of this is a surprise. So we've worked insanely hard, and I've actually converted my entire job description to just working on distance learning, creating procedures and training staff. That's what I do right now. So I want to show you some of the tools that we've used, and that's going to come by way of a rubric. So what we eventually said is, okay, if we're going to measure this, if we're going to set standards, we need to have some clear guidelines, and we need to have language that describes basically a rubric of practice, the same way that you would use a writing rubric to assess kids. So I'm going to share a screen, we'll do one more screen share, and I'm going to give you a sample rubric that we used 1 or 2 stages ago. And we're going to go through an exercise that we did with a bunch of our teachers. We gave a sample lesson and a rubric of what we thought constituted good teaching. And we're going to ask, but we left the rubric blank. And so we're going to ask people to actually describe what does beginner, growing, and more exemplar practice look like. So let's take a peek at the rubric, and then I'm going to give you the assignment to watch a lesson, and we're going to use that rubric and assess it. So far, so good? Let me see in the chat or give me a wave. Does that make sense? Okay, great. Would someone please actually repeat back to me, what are we about to do next, if you got it? Come off mute and tell me what we're about to do next. Essie, would you do that? What you nodded. What are we about to do next?
We are going to get a rubric to fill in, and we're going to watch a lesson, and we're going to fill it in for the lesson, the rubric, about what would constitute What would be an assessment for that lesson?
Okay, awesome, good. And by the way, but what I just did to you, sorry, right? That's a cold call. A cold call is you didn't know that I was going to ask you that. They're warm calls as well. Sometimes we rehearse them and we tell people we're going to call on them in advance. The other thing that I did as part of some of the teaching pedagogy that we've practiced is not just to give less directions verbally, but to ask people in the group to reinforce. Those are various ways that we've done this. So let me start by sharing the rubric with you. You have access to it through that master document if you have it, but feel free to access it off the screen. So here's the rubric that we've started using. Now, let me show you a more developed version of it. The exercise we did with our teachers was we said, okay, we're going to take one example for instruction. Does the teacher offer directions in a variety of ways? We think that we have growing, experienced, and expert teachers. If you're a growing teacher, then you might only use a single modality for giving directions. And you might fail to check for understanding by asking, cold calling Eileen. Or no, we didn't put Eileen's name. If you're experienced, then you'll give directions more than once. You use different modalities. You'll check for understandings. If you're an expert teacher, then you would post a link or a persistent visual reminder of directions in the chat box. Or in my case, I feel like I'm only semi-experienced, semi-expert. I gave you this master document with all of our directions here. So that's close. But again, think about the fact that things that you put up on screen, this whole rubric is going to vanish when I scroll down. And we should think about giving persistent directions that kids can access. So if that's what our flow from growing, experience, and expert looks like, here are the standards that I want you guys to keep in mind. And what we'll do using another Mentee link in a couple of minutes is this. Do teachers activate learners to step beyond passive observation and actively apply lesson content? I'm going to invite someone to come off mute and reread what I just read, because this is going to be the standard that we're going to develop. Someone come off mute. I can't see you right now, so someone will have to volunteer.
Okay. Now I've
What's
forgotten.
in the box for learning? Yeah, just that box. If you read.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, do teachers activate learners to step beyond passive observers and actively apply lesson content?
Awesome, great. And by the way, just as the teacher, there's always that moment of terror when you're staring at the screen and you don't know if your kid's going to answer. You have to be really, the wait time on video instruction is longer than in the classroom sometimes. You got to get used to that. It drives me crazy, but it's a different flow of teaching. So what I'm going to ask you all to do after you see this lesson is to identify what would it look like if you're a growing teacher or an experienced teacher or an expert teacher, based on the standard of, do we activate learners to step beyond passive observations and actively apply what they've seen? So here's where I usually do ask people to take off the names and actually be on camera, because right now I can only see 5 of you. So what I usually do in the classroom, and I would like actually to ask the people, please do turn your cameras on. So if the directions made sense, give me a wave. Okay. Yeah? Good. Okay, and by the way, in the same way, thank you. Sometimes I do that and I see kids going thumbs down. And I say, oh, I have to pause. So there are 25 of you on the screen, or there are 24 of you on the screen right now. I can scan that screen very quickly. And if someone goes no, then I know that we need to pause and clarify. So that's why you have to get your kids on camera, including the fact that you can't mark them as present if they're eating a klicher and they're in the bathroom or something like that. So not that your kids would dare do that. So I want to transition us over. We're going to watch a lesson that I taught because I don't want to embarrass anybody else but me. And after that, I'm going to pop you over to another Mentee poll. And in this Mentee poll, what you guys will do is they'll have 2 questions. One will be to give some quick immediate feedback on the lesson, just gut level feedback. A glow and a grow. A glow is, ooh, here's what was good. A grow is, here's what you could have done better. It's my lesson. Please feel free to criticize it. No problem if you do. The next screen that you'll see is going to be response to that rubric standard number 6, activating learners to step beyond passive observation. And I want you to actually take your hand at writing the qualification rubric. A growing teacher might fail to, a growing teacher might seldom, an experienced teacher will often, an expert teacher will always. So now are our directions clear about what's going to happen next? Let's see, thumbs up or waves. Yes? Okay, good. So let's watch some video and you get to see me teach some of my favorite kiddos. Here we go. Once, twice, and here we are. All right, hold on. So I want to try one other thing here. Do we like this blue circle, like this, I'm sorry, this blue square? I see one blue bar, another blue bar, and another blue bar, and another blue bar. Could we maybe make it a little more interesting than that? Maya's not so happy. Okay, so here's I'm gonna start Maya, Maria, Ella, and then Oscar. I want you guys to, all of you, shout out one color. So Maya, you get to go first. What color do you want to shout out? Trust your gut. Shout quickly though.
Green.
Green? Okay, good. Got it. All right, so Maria, want to pick a color?
Yellow.
Okay, great. It's going to be a very interesting square once we get to the end. Ella, your choice.
Pink.
Oh, I was waiting for pink. I was waiting for pink. Oscar, you get the last pick. Pick a color.
Silver.
Say it one more time, dear. I didn't hear you.
Silver.
Oh, okay, silver. I'm curious. I haven't used silver in a while. I'm not sure how that's going to turn out. Okay, so let's try something. One of the things that we want to have computers do for us is do things automatically so that we don't need to do them manually. So if I wanted to draw a lot of different lines, I could go and every single time I wanted a different color. Let me try silver for starters, because I haven't seen what that would look like. So we all see on line 11, right? So I have turtle dot. What's the next word in that line of code?
Color.
Good job, Oscar. Maria, do you see it? Okay, great. Okay, so let's see what our silver looks like. Oscar, do you like the way it looks? You do? Okay. All right, but the only problem is I wanted to have a different bar for each of you. All right, so here's where the computer thinking comes into place. Always automate. Always, always, always automate. So I put all of your different colors into a big mush, otherwise known as a tuple, but I'll just call it a big mush for the second. And how many different things do we have going on in this big mush? Hold up the number of fingers. How many different colors do I have going? 4. Okay, so great. So what I want to do, I want to ask Python to grab one of the colors out of the mush each time. The way it grabs them is going to be not the way you would expect, but I'm not going to talk about that right now. But what is the name of that mush? Because I had to give it a name, otherwise I'd never get it back. So up on line 8, what's the name of my mush?
Colors.
Okay. Well, great. So if I ask my turtle color to pick out colors, then I should be able to grab the mush, right? And that should give me a different bar each time, right? All right. Okay, so here we go. Something really scary is about to happen, so don't be afraid, because I'm about to blow up the program. There's a bug there that I know about and you're about to find. Here we go. So give me a finger countdown, because we're going to run this on 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and wait, guys, what happened? Okay, so I'm gonna direct us over to this Mentee poll. I'm gonna ask you to do 2 things. Thing number 1, gut impressions. What was good about the lesson? What could be better about the lesson? And then thing number 2, we're gonna ask you to take those different standards that we had talked about, again, and those standards include if I was looking to activate learners, if I were growing or experienced or expert, what might those be? You can pick any one of those to come in. So I'm going to share out the Mentee. I'm going to share out or actually, and Leah, would you kindly share the link on the screen for that second Mentee poll? And I'm going to take a 1-minute pause and display it live as people type. Excellent, great. Okay, good. So I'm going to screen share your results as they live stream, and I'm going to hold my breath and let's see how we've done here. I'll start sharing in just a second.
The link is in the chat.
Thank you so much, Leah. I appreciate it. Here we go. Don't be nice to me because I'm the session leader. Tell me ways to grow. Good, thank you. Good rapport, but didn't have hands-on activity, and that could have been added. That's awesome. The countdown showed that people were listening, right? And now again, we leveraged the video, real-time video on the screen. I am, by the way, persuaded that I am, even in face-to-face classrooms, when COVID is over, I want to use Zoom in the classroom, just so I can share screens back and forth. Yep, and everyone's catching, right? The involvement is good, but everyone's catching that the activity level, who's doing most of the activity? It's the teacher, and you're all keying in on that. So this would not be an expert level lesson. This might be an experience level, but I wouldn't give this expert yet because, you know, the kids weren't as active as they could have been. Okay, right. Ask open-ended questions. That's a great way. Could kids, now here's an interesting thing. Kids could fill in the culture, could fill in the colors. This was a sample lesson. They had never seen this before. They had never seen this before. So I hadn't yet taught them how to use some of the screen tools. I can actually share remote control on the screen and let them type across. Right, nice, nice. Okay, all right, great. Now, the risk of not knowing what happens with silver is an interesting thing. It's a whole long pedagogy question. I actually believe that unpredictable failures are generative to the teaching process. So all good, but everyone needs to teach in a way and in a space that they're comfortable with. Right, good, good, so thanks. I wanted to ask you to jump over to that second piece of feedback and you know, let's talk about, and again, just to kind of focus on what I'd like you all to do. Choose a box. Based on some of what I learned by watching this lesson, I might say a growing teacher would do da-da-da-da-da, or an experienced teacher. I'm going to give this lesson experience, not expert. So I might say an experienced teacher used a range of, but hadn't yet something else. So I'm going to pause for a minute or two. Again, inviting your input there. This work is not particularly easy, and we're doing it on the fly. This usually takes hours. But see even if you can attach just a few keywords. Growing teacher, blank. Experienced teacher, blank. Expert teacher, blank. See what you can come up with. And again, this is quick and dirty work. I'm going to give about 15-20 seconds pause. And I do want to ask you to give it your best shot for that second Mentee question.
I'm not sure where to write it.
Go ahead, please.
I'm not sure, where should I write it?
There's a, let me pull up the poll that you guys have. So right here in this box.
Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you. No problem. You can either use the link in the chat or type in longhand and get there this way. Oops. So I'll give you an extra 10, 15 seconds. And Leah, I'm watching the time as requested. Just a couple keywords, guys. Okay. A growing teacher would have minimal student activation during the lesson. Great. A growing teacher does all the talking. Good, good observations. That's outstanding. I'm going to wait for one or two more, and then I'm going to move us on to make sure that we have Q&A time.
If you've given one answer and you'd like to give a second, feel free to write it in the chat, and I'll read it out to the group. The Mentimeter only allows one answer.
And by the way, Leanne, this is also, yeah. And I am actually, Leanne, I'm just keeping my eye on the time. I am going to move on with the hopes that people, you know, got a sense of where we are. Here's what I want to do next for you. I'm going to show you two things. I want to, after going through this whole process, which I call, right, this move that we just took you through, right? If the first step is shock, and the second is incoherence, experimentation, and policymaking. Policymaking is the point that I caught you. Policymaking is the place at which we say, okay, let's actively analyze data based on what we know to be good instruction. Let's see what's going on with our practice. Let's make critical choices about our practice. What I'm going to show you next is the collaboration point. The collaboration point is where we are now, and it's resulted in two documents that came from a huge amount of peer collaboration. I'll put them up on the screen, and I'll narrate a little bit about them as we go, and then we can come in for questions and answers. So let me start by going back to our screen share and show you kind of what the fruits of the labor look like. So here's one. My field is career technology education. I started the year with about 80 staff meeting on our team, and I presented them with a formal document. And in that formal document, we laid out programmatic expectations for what their distance learning lessons should look like, including how the time should flow, things that are essential and shouldn't be missed, and very importantly for our field, how we expected differentiation to work, what learning styles should be accommodated, and how we should integrate project-based learning into the assignments that they have. So these were not suggestions. These were policy expectations that were network-wide across all 47 campuses for what we had asked people to do. We spent a lot of time getting that. At the same time, here's the other thing, this open-ended evaluation tool, well, we came up with, and I'm not going to do a deep dive, but I simply want to flag the fact that we have norms and expectations for how teachers offer directions, how teachers communicate, and do they share the communication space? Do teachers effectively manage technical aspects of the chat? And again, we have snapshots at every level for what a campus director might want to look at for his or her staff and how to coach and support them. So where this all comes back to in the end, as you go through this whole cycle, by the time we get through the shock, incoherence, and experimentation, we're at the last place of collaboration. And if you are there and you work as a coherent body, you move together, there's a shared goal, your communications are focused, and you assess how well people are doing against some shared, clear, measurable norms. We got there quickly, but we invested a huge amount of work. I simply wanted to give people a snapshot of this whole process, because wherever you are in the process of responding as an institution, there are clear steps that you can take to make your collaboration more coherent. It gets rid of the questions. Remember that opening slide? It's August and I have no idea what's going on tomorrow. We all felt that way 3 or 4 weeks ago. everyone now is getting into a clearer frame. And I think using this kind of process is a way of leveraging people's energy to have clarity and purposeful work. So that's my little snap, my 40-minute case study of what Uplift Education has done. And I am delighted to step back and let Leah moderate question, answers, discussions, arguments, anything. Bring it on.
So a great question came up in the chat while we were suggesting some of these rubrics. And the question is, isn't this limited to our own experience and level? So how can I, if I'm a beginning teacher, give feedback or set the standards in the rubric for what an expert teacher should be able to do?
Right. You know, in this case, the very first loop of developing this rubric, and again, I showed you that very complicated, you know, that 4 or 5 page assessment rubric. So that assessment rubric started with a real-time session. I taught a live lesson. We had 20 teachers, 30 teachers participating. We took live inputs, and then we shopped it around to a lot of other people. We gave it to administrators, we gave it, and that's the collaborate part. And that's where the peer cooperation part is. Everyone saw something different. And in the end, my job at the end was to take, you know, all these different perspectives and bring them together in simple language. So I do not believe that, let me flip it in the positive. A first-year teacher sees plenty and knows more than enough to contribute positively to this process. And I also think, depending on the culture of your school, that kind of empowerment is important. So don't.
So it's really a collaborative process.
Yeah. It was a lot. It was very.
Let's turn this.
It was a lot of complicated work, but in the end, it was simply a lot of listening.
Excellent. Now it's time for us to listen to you guys, the participants. What questions do you have? Comments? Everybody's voice is valuable in this discussion.
And let me add another possibility. Ask me specific questions about where your school is right now. Our school is doing this. What should we do next? What do we want to do next? Problem solve. We can use this space.
Ellie, at the beginning, you wanted to share a particular student. Would you like to jump in now and tell us about that? Unmute yourself so we can hear you. I'll unmute you. There you go.
I had kids with whom I had great relationships before the virus came. And after I tried to teach with Zoom, only 2 or 3 kids came to me and nobody came back. And so I am still in incoherence. I just don't know what to do.
Your administrators need to require your kids to be there and give them a chisor if they're not. The simple answer. And that has been the really, really painful part of this, is that we started with this Zoom instruction being supplemental. Where we are right now for the school with which I'm working, if kids don't show up on Zoom, the school doesn't get funded. So you can bet that the school administration is ensuring that the kids are logging in to their lessons. And I mean, we're being audited, basically.
Great. Thank you. Aline, it looks like you've got a question. Eileen, did you have a question? Go. Okay.
So Leah, tell me tell me where to go next. Essay?
I did want to say, I wrote it in the chat, that this rubric is very helpful as an experienced teacher who's mentoring 2 other teachers, because I entirely forgot what they think. And sometimes I just assume that they see the possibilities that I see. And if we fill it out together, that would really help me. So thank you.
I appreciate it. And, you know, this whole space, like what we learn, what we assume about a classroom is completely dislodged as we move to Zoom. But other things come and can become very powerful tools. So in a classroom, if a child is misbehaving or off task and I'm teaching something funnily, all I need is a stern view into all I need is eye contact, or maybe a half of a step closer. And you know, the student 90% of the time knows. Okay, so that's a tool that you lose in Zoom. At the same time, you have the ability to be face-to-face instantaneously. You have the ability to have kids collaborate. You can encourage kids to write notes to each other as part of the learning process that are not disruptive of other kids. So there are all kinds of things that there are assets that come into hand. And it really is a matter of relearning what this new classroom looks like. And using that space well.
Alan, speaking of what the new classroom looks like, someone posted earlier in the chat that they are going to have half their class face-to-face and the other half simultaneously on Zoom.
Yes.
So if you're
Thanks for reminding me.
And here, address that, please.
So guess what? The Hanchayot Klaliyot that my school will be working with is exactly that. We have told teachers, some families have elected to have kids learn enrolled in distance classes. Others want kids only in person, some a mix. We have told teachers to present lessons for Zoom with some kids who happen to be physically present. All of the planning is done for the distance classroom. And that's been a very, very clear and explicit direction that we've given.
Do all your kids have laptops in front of them or computers in the class?
We bought 5,000 laptops to be able to give Chromebooks out to kids. But our kids are poor. Some of our kids don't have Wi-Fi. Some of our households, kids are working. In some of our households, kids have jobs, so parents can pay rent. All right, that's the level of. So one of the very, very significant commitments that our school made was to go through our budget, and anything discretionary, we put a couple $100,000 into buying Chromebooks. And I went out and was part of a Chromebook giveaway for our students. It was the first time I'd seen students in weeks. We made that our biggest ticket item of the year because we realized that poor families would be excluded from fair access to resources if we didn't get the technology. And it wasn't as expensive as we thought it was going to be. So yeah, that was the biggest fight that I personally had. It was collegial. It was advancing that agenda. And as a result of having that agenda listened to, I gave up about 2/3 of my department budget for buying hardware, gladly, because, you know. So the simple answer is yes.
Wonderful. We're at the place where, on behalf of ETAI, I thank Alan for giving us his time, sharing his experience from the school system in Texas, and relating to our questions about the situation here in Israel. So I've just posted into the chat the link to the program. The next thing we've got is a 20-minute break in browsing, which means that you can log back into the main room and see what the booksellers have to offer and chat with friends. And then at 1 o'clock exactly, Tracy's keeping us very much on schedule. At 1 o'clock, Rania Essa will deliver the final keynote speech. She is brilliant, and I think you'll all really enjoy that. So a big thank you to Alan, and thank you to all of you for coming to be here with us.
Thank you all so much for being here. Leah, thank you so much for co-hosting, facilitating. I appreciate it. I would have been lost 10 times over without you. So, can I add a personal note?
Yes.
All right. So in the background, I'm an Oleh Chadash. I just arrived 2 weeks ago. The last errand that I needed to do, and I could only do it this morning, was to get my Tudat Zehut Zmanit. So I made it in and out of the Misrad Pnim in a single hour, that was perhaps, every time I pass that office, I will say the blessing for that a miracle happened to me here, because it only took me 1 hour to get in and out of Misrad Pnim in downtown Jerusalem. But it's been a very wonderful day and good to be here.
Fantastic. We're very happy that you've made Aliyah and that you're here to be part of our English teachers community in Israel and part of ETAI.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
All right, we'll see you guys all in the main plenary.